Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Do Not Falter Battle Lounge with the 2MK team. A true berserker has appeared, probably. I think this is the last, well, this and the follow-up NA stream will be the last ones before the game patches. And we have no idea what to expect from these. Okay, looks like they are in fact gone. I'm actually going to give them a moment just in case they actually come back. Sometimes that does happen, and I don't really know what caused this connection loss in the first place. We have 2 arcade machines open today, one for not being on stream, and one for joining in and being either least looked at and analyzed, or it depends on the day, because today I'm not necessarily going to be saying a lot. The stream will not be completely silent, but there's definitely going to be less of it, as if there is a possibly big patch incoming, it's going to matter. A game like this normally needs to have a very specific style of approach to its patches if its aim is to stay current, relevant, whatever. But the weird thing about fighting games is that if they've sold most of the things they intended to sell, for example, in this case, not needing any DLC, they just need enough to make people actually buy setups for tournaments and similar. Digital and marketing tends to cover that these days. You don't necessarily get the situation where a couple of friends go to someone else's house, play a game they've never seen before, decide, hey, this is great, I should buy this so that we can play it, and then move on from there. It's much less likely to happen in our current world. People who want this game probably already have it, and you'd mostly be getting the money from those who couldn't afford it at the time and really wanted it, or the few who just didn't bother because someone else had it and now need it. thing I think I'll be surprised if they change in this game is actually the damage. Even for Hitman and Swiftmaster, I'll be surprised if they meaningfully change the basic damage. Because it's not technically that bad. It's the number of consistent starters that lead to that damage that seem to be a bigger problem. But even then, we have specifically looked in the past for ways around this and found quite a few of them. So it's probably more so a matter of how understandable the game is and how easily one can avoid taking big damage if you know what you're doing. But that move, for example, maybe it's not like it's slow or you can stop it. So what I mean is, I'm not expecting a full damage nerf. I'm expecting certain moves that are too close to the top of damage with what seems to be relatively little downside to be the things that lose their big damage. For example, this combo, while meaningful and takes long, is about a fifth of a character's health. But somehow, this one gets all the way down here. Is it because you were supposed to end here? That isn't really sensible given how that setup works. Again, pretty good. 1/5 of health off of a thing that was functionally a read. And that was white health doing its thing. And we all know Hitman Awakening, but even this, I wouldn't necessarily say, yeah, let's go. This game is hard to practice. I think that's one of my biggest issues with it. Or maybe it's just Kunoichi that's hard to practice, but I don't think so. I've watched other people try to do their combo trials. It's hard to practice for a reason that I often find when I'm fighting high-level players in this game. They get themselves into situations where their stuff isn't working on me and they're not sure why. And it's often because the expectation they have for what should work is broken up by things that I'm doing. But that implies that they didn't actually practice those things when they had the option. Or that they didn't have the option. And I feel like more often than not, that's the issue I find myself in. Why does that hit me all the way up there? That is literally my void deciding, no, I'm covering literally half the screen right now. Just don't come here. I do see why people end up with that particular dependency in this playstyle against this character, because what else are you going to do sometimes? You might think this is discouraging, but it's more so that it's oddly slow. I don't know how to explain that particularly well. Oh, there you go. When games are very limiting in your good options at any given range, the players stick to their best option all of the time, resulting in a relatively slow gameplay. And I think that's kind of my problem that I didn't want out of this game. I didn't want this game to be one where I was constantly doing the best thing for my purpose at one moment, as if it was a good idea in general. Because if I spend too much time trying to get to perfect positions, the game feels a little less dynamic to me. And that be a perfect example of it. Based on that interaction we just had, the thing I should always do is not do anything. So if anything I'm hoping from the patch, it is in fact that they spend a little more time making some options less good. But I'm not sure if it will work well enough at this point we're at. Having high damage on top of that is really problematic in a different way than you'd expect from many games, simply because the amount of time spent getting your perfect combo so that your opponent actually dies and avoiding all other situations is kind of high. But this game type often has long periods of just blocking, so there's that. When your opponent is less confident in any given way, this makes it even more slow in a specific situation. Because it means that your best option is often to not do anything at all. Until you see them pose a threat, that's it, you're done. which can be a little bit hard for me to adapt to when facing people other than team members because other people do even less of this. This can make a game that seems very frenetic, very focused on a lot of specific things happening, actually be very slow. Because once you've learned to block correctly, which is often almost automatic, you don't really have anything else you need to do except wait for your opponent to not necessarily make a mistake, but change their mindset in a way that you can see. This is a similar matchup actually. Because you basically can't touch Vanguard at all, like you literally don't get to move as Kunoichi in this matchup. Every time I have fought a Vanguard, it has been effectively that for 20 seconds. And eventually that happens. So this match turns so slow that I don't think there's actually a way to fight it that counts as interesting as the game is currently balanced. But I'm not sure they could change a lot about Vanguard to make this different. And from what I've been seeing, what people need as buffs for this character to make other content work isn't useful. So honestly, I should just do this for the entire round. My opponent can dodge through it, but if we're considering what's a good idea for me in this matchup versus what's a bad idea, fighting in any other way is a bad idea. This way I can minimize the damage I'm taking and get more space for that attack, for example. Frog doesn't work. Uppercut doesn't work because it's not invincible enough. And with punishing that, it works a little bit, but who cares? Because I don't need to do it and it doesn't benefit me to try. So even though this is the proper Vanguard response, there isn't a thing I should be doing that's better. At best, I'll get like a specific Frog thing, but I think Frog takes so long that if I try to do it in response to Vanguard throwing out a specific button, the answer from Vanguard's side is actually to hit the other half of the impact button, and that would be it. He'll get what he needs anyway.
This is compounded by his ability to backdash out of a lot of situations that otherwise would be dangerous for a character. But again, this isn't necessarily even a winning strategy. I just definitely shouldn't do anything basically ever, as just demonstrated. How that's half my life, and this isn't even like the good Vanguard combos. One of the things that does help is, of course, getting Stigma off fast enough to get something. But he does have counters to the Stigma, and you therefore would have to be in position for the juggle nearly all of the time. Anyways, as I prefer to play this match with actual attacking, I'm just going to lose it, but I don't really care at this point. Because the riskier I play, the more sensible the outcomes are for my preference of gaming. Even if that's mainly because the match is just over faster. This match is mainly the opposite experience. It's not as clear-cut, but there's a lot of places where Vanguard just shouldn't do anything because any attack used at all will get sucked into or absorbed by Lost Warriors. In fact, being at the end of certain spacings, which are the only spacings you can easily get to, basically means all you can do is roll. And I think that might just be the way this game works until they make a specific type of change. The question is whether or not they have the experience to know which change to make. And as we've seen many, many times from many, many fighting game developers, their vision of how the game should feel can easily get in the way of what they need for the game to actually feel like anything. As it's very easily possible for a game's actual mechanics to be downplayed simply by the fact that there's no reason to actually use any of them. I've definitely been thinking about whether or not the way that the game plays in general can be dealt with that way. And so far, it seems like the best options have to do with the length of the dodge roll, since you already basically can't do that much after it. Even as a player who often benefits from the fact that I have animations so long that people get hit after dodge rolling, I still think it's generally a bad flow design for the game. Personally, I don't know whether or not that is in fact a way they could or would solve it, and I'm not really sure it's a great one by itself anyway, but it's definitely in there as a thing that I noticed to be a problem a lot of the time. If you can't roll through certain things, then you don't have a way to start certain types of offense, and you're very, very much encouraged to just not try. That's how that combo works. I know I have been getting hit by more than that lately. There's two different ways that Lost Warrior must do that, and it's very annoying that there are two different ways of that type, but if you've gotten the right combo set and know what you're doing enough, you can in fact keep his MP up. It's very specific though. The result is probably, at the moment, a game that incentivizes you to play it only if the thing you want to do is the exact thing that's a good idea for your character to do, or so much pressure against an opponent who doesn't know how to defend it that you just win eventually. In the past, games that have this style of play have generally not been helped by reducing their damage. As far as we could tell, they all basically just fail at that. In fact, I think if I had to add something, aside from removing the scaling on specific things, it's something that I think sort of exists but doesn't get used, and I should probably test it the next time I see it. Can you conversion dodge? And if you can conversion dodge, would it be fine to have a way for you to keep the conversions and the dodges momentum? Because at the moment, conversion messes with momentum a lot. And you don't really want this to change too much, as other general skills, like a whole bunch of weird combos, would open up, and you wouldn't want any of that. But at the moment, if you could dodge, convert, and keep going and still get the side switch, or even maybe not, use conversion so that a roll that would have gone in front is now, or roll that would have gone behind is now going in front. This game has a block button. It wouldn't be overwhelming in terms of offensive strategy for this to happen. It also side switch corrects your strikes really well, even to the point of, I think, doing so mid-animation, but I don't remember this for sure either. I think it just moves the hitbox and just keeps the animation going in the direction, which is very weird to see, but it's probably better for balance. There's definitely some indications and points in this game though where the overall flow would be improved if someone had some different or better way of moving around in neutral that had some limit. Whether that limit be MP, which I don't think would be a good idea, or being able to use better options in some other form. Specifically, right there, it would have helped a lot with a quite large cost. Specifically, all of the white health that had been dealt by the attack being blocked. I also expect them to change somewhat which moves give white health and don't, for various reasons. with some characters specifically getting more moves that cause it, and some getting less. An unlikely effect, which I don't think would actually end up being a problem either, is that most characters who would get a lot more damage string openings from this technically either need it, strictly speaking, or wouldn't normally have been in a position where they had HP to do it with. With the biggest change probably being Dragon Knight or Kunoichi versus Launcher, and making those matches at least somewhat more interesting. But those are still balanced out somewhat by what the cost would actually be. If your opponent has put a ton of white health damage on you, and you decide, I'm going for conversion roll in order to get to you and deal my own damage, then you've probably given up a lot of health. Particularly in the Launcher matchup, you will have lost a lot of health that way. Fortunately, her being a character who would let you do this really often would then shift the balance in a different way and make her focus more on her positioning and less on, I'm just pushing you out until you can't do anything anymore, thanks. They've also solved a large amount of problems in this game by making it so that certain approach moves that you might not expect to be safe actually are safe, simply so that you can make those sorts of things, so that you can cross the screen at all. But this is just me theory crafting in general about game design. Still, they probably have to do something if they actually want this game to keep going. And I can definitely see why they might not have changed it before, because fighting game designers are a little bit insidious about this. They know that if they make the game's mechanics too complicated at the beginning, it'll turn off a bunch of people. So, now that they have the ability to patch games, I'm fairly convinced that they spend at least some time doing the easy version of the game with the high damage and the stuff that will get them initial sales from all the people who think it's super cool but will lose interest in 2 months. Which I believe is today, probably? I think it was June. But I'm reminded by OmniRabbit that there was conversion dodge and they took it out. I'm sure they probably had some reason that was good at the time, but again, it could literally just be, oh wait, people are going to think this is too complicated. And barriers to entry of understanding of this sort of game would be terrible. But they can go ahead and make it more complicated later. And often that's something you do see. There's some relatively large changes to game mechanics to keep it fresh, as they say. So don't count out the fact that someone might decide, yeah, we're just changing the entire mechanics of this game. It's also why I have a specific reaction to the latest Street Fighter 6 footage, thinking to myself, there's no way y'all are leaving all these in here. But because they have such strong analytic tools at this level, it's getting harder and harder to convince me, at least, that they didn't know what would happen. Particularly because sometimes they make this patch change far too quickly and far too confidently for them to have not thought about this before. That said, development in general does have a reason why this might happen without being in any way people trying to mess with you or being disingenuous. If they came to the conclusion that something needed to be changed but didn't have a build that was stable enough that with that change Then they'd go through everything, make sure that Sony or whoever takes it, get that game out there so people can play it as much as they need to, and continue in the background testing their perspectives on things that need shifting. Games that don't do this often take a lot longer to release, but are much stabler. For example, right now, I don't expect to see any King of Fighters patches. More so because even if it was that popular a game as a standard thing, the way King of Fighters is played, it means it doesn't come up too often. But regardless of anything else, you can easily see that there is a core of gameplay here that, even if it's not with this game, we may see it recreated in another one. But this does depend heavily on what fighting game players who, actually keep playing these games truly prefer. Because it could simply be that the style of neutral that this game allows for is the style of neutral that anyone who picked it up intended and wanted to play. Honestly, given the style of game it is, I doubt there was a whole lot of decision making done based on what people wanted to play. And they didn't really show off anything that gave a clear idea there either. But that guard break bar does last kind of long, so you could probably assume that there was some intention for people to be blocking for long periods. Alright, here we go. There's a different way to do this though, based on the momentum offered by the clone teleport. The riskiness of different can be a big problem. But making your opponent think about more things is always good. I think I'm dead. Which honestly is... Oh, I guess he dropped it? It's the only thing I can get this move used for. If you have time to combine the momentum from the log with the frog, you can get even more out of this. But the spacing for this stops working the moment the Hitman player realizes that they should be slightly more offensive. Not necessarily trying to hit you when you dash, but reacting to the position when the frog is called at all. I think I wouldn't ask for that move to cover less space, I would ask for it to have less active frames. think this character is about as unfair as Seth is in Under Night, because she doesn't let you understand what's happening, which, while it's good for a ninja style character as a generality, it's different from how those normally play out, because it's not a matter of you didn't see, it's a matter of you didn't even understand. Which leads back to the same problem I was discussing before. The thing you're dealing with as the player facing her isn't, did this thing happen on the timing I expected at all? It's literally, okay, why did that happen? If you can't figure out why something happens, you can't avoid it. But that's a lot of frame data trickery, so you can't really get away from it. Fortunately, there are solutions. Slow. Now how did I end up grounded that time? This is a perfect example. It's probably kind of fun for a specific type of player, but I'm pretty sure that OmniRapid is just doing things because of instinct and flow and not at any point understanding what is happening here. I'm playing the character and I barely understand what's happening here. I can react to it because it doesn't surprise me every time it happens, but it's not the same thing. Well, at the end of the day, we do not know what they will do. They could double down, they could change practically nothing, because that's what they did last time, and people were quite surprised, honestly. But, given that they managed so well, and the game is, for what it's worth, I don't think balance is the thing most people are complaining about other than Swiftmaster. In fact, there aren't that many complaints per se at all. Which leads to the question of, could I improve this without changing what the game is? And that, of course, is one of the hardest things to affect in any fighting game. How can I make this game better without changing what it is in some way, or making it worse for some subset of players that I possibly haven't walked through everything for? Even given Lost Warrior damage, as we're now seeing it, I think this works. Nope. Remains hard to hit. We'll almost certainly be having another separate NA Lounge later as normal. And between there will be a lot of work done to complete our new set of King of Fighters bots, which should be released either just before or just after / during that stream at 7:30 Eastern. And of course, therefore, next week you'll get to hear all of our opinions on whatever changes the patch does in fact make. You'll of course be able to find out whether or not we had any delays, or just generally things related to stream timings and similar on our Twitter @2_FK_FGC. So expect to see some announcements, let's say, at that point. The bot itself will of course be up on 2-mk.org under KOF bots. Definitely it will be 5 of them. But it's technically one bot, you input one bot. If you're not familiar with this, obviously all of the information is on the site for you to check out at your leisure. But this brings us to the end of this DNF Dual Lounge stream. The lounge itself may stay open for a while, but probably only another half hour to an hour at most. Hop in if you would like to. But you're once again being left on the cliffhanger of who really won this match. This has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.